Hello, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are diving into something absolutely fascinating. We're going to decode a highly visual method for mental transformation. We're breaking down a deeply personal framework from author Tracy B. Jones and mapping out a journey from severe trauma to inner peace by translating ancient linguistic symbols into a very modern psychological tool. Let's get started. Now, to really grasp the solution, we first have to understand where it all started. Take a look at this imagery of the brain intertwined with butterflies. The author uses this to introduce her initial state of trauma. Following severe trauma, which included military sexual assault, she suffered from intense anxiety and night terrors. In her own words, she felt like a caged butterfly. Think about that for a second. The butterflies represent a mind fluttering frantically, trapped within its own boundaries, just desperately searching for a way out. I want to read you something directly from the text because, honestly, it grounds everything we're looking at today in reality. Quote, "The haunting memories of past trauma kept me trapped, like a butterfly silently caged in my master bedroom for 3 years." You see, we aren't just talking about some abstract theory today. We are talking about a very real, very raw problem of severe anxiety and confinement. A problem of that magnitude, it necessitates a powerful, structured solution to literally rewire how the mind processes trials and temptations. All right, so here is our game plan for how we're going to decode these complex visuals step by step. We'll start with the mind transformation journey, explore the cross-compass diagram, decode some ancient Hebrew pictographs, break down the TTED-CBA equation, look at the action plan journals, and finally see how this all navigates toward peace. Section 1, the mind transformation journey. Section 2, the cross-compass diagram. Okay, so this is the core of the author's theoretical solution. She realized that true freedom wasn't just about physically escaping her bedroom. It was about establishing internal boundaries and understanding the mechanics of her own thinking. Notice the structure she sketched out to visualize her internal battles. You've got two outer parallel poles, a slightly higher center pole, and a transverse bar. In this framework, this isn't just a religious symbol. It's utilized as the literal architecture of the mind. Let's break down how this flows. In the author's framework, the left pole represents the path of perversion and the works of the flesh, essentially negative, destructive habits. The right pole represents the exact opposite, the fruitage of the spirit, peace, and new, positive ways of living. And that center pole? That is the path of transformation. But notice the horizontal transverse bar. That bar represents the absolutely critical moment of decision. It's the crossroad where a person must choose between their fleshly, traumatic reactions and what the author defines as Abba's, or God's will. Section 3. Decoding Hebrew pictographs. This is where it gets super cool. To really understand the diagram's structure and authority, the author immersed herself in ancient Hebrew. It might surprise you to know that these early alphabets functioned almost like modern emojis. They used visual symbols to convey deep, complex meanings. For example, Aleph is represented by an ox head. In ancient agricultural societies, the ox head symbolized incredible strength, power, and often an older, experienced ox yoked to a younger one to teach it. It represents a strong leader. Then you have Bet, which looks like a nomadic tent. This symbolizes the house, the family, and the inside or inner self. Now, let's add a third symbol to the mix, Lamed. This one is depicted as a shepherd's staff. A shepherd's staff is a tool of authority. It's used to direct, redirect, discipline, and protect the flock from predators. The shepherd's staff is essentially the visual anchor for understanding authority and guidance in the ancient Hebrew mind. When you combine the staff with the ox head we just saw, it creates this profound concept of strong authority. And this brilliantly illustrates how this visual approach constructs complex psychological concepts. Look at the concept of the mind, or consciousness. It's formed by combining the shepherd's staff, meaning authority, with the tent, meaning inside. Therefore, the mind is your authority insight. On the flip side, the concept of perversion, which means turning away from truth, is the shepherd's staff combined with a cutting tool. It literally translates to authority cut. You are severing your internal guiding authority. It's just an incredibly visual way to understand mental discipline. Section 4, the TTED-CBA equation. So we're taking all that ancient wisdom and translating it into a modern psychological tool that sits right on the center pole of the cross compass. We get the TTD-CBA equation. Let's walk through this sequence together. It all starts with step 1, a trial or temptation. This trigger leads to step 2, thoughts. Those thoughts formulate into step 3, emotions. Emotions fuel step 4, desires. Those desires force you to make step 5, choices. Your choices ignite step 6, battles within yourself, which ultimately result in the aftermath. It is a predictable, step-by-step chain reaction happening inside our brains every single day. The author points out something crucial here. My transformation is an ongoing process, but now I know that it can be accomplished if I stay within the boundaries of the cross. The really important takeaway from this is recognizing that chain reaction. By seeing a trial not just as a random bad event, but as step 1 in an equation, you gain the power to intercept it before it turns into a negative aftermath. Section 5, Action Plan Journals. So how do we actually put this into practice? Well, the framework uses these very specific daily journals. You have the 5-minute trials journal and the temptation journal, and they use precise prompts. They ask the user to identify things that trigger the trial. They even have you rate your temptation level with stars at the bottom. It prompts you to write out your 3 steps to flee. This is all about taking the abstract anxiety that once trapped her in a bedroom and pinning it down onto paper where it can actually be measured and managed. And this daily practice builds into the ultimate daily tool, the TTEDCBA Action Plan Worksheet. Notice how it forces the user to split their internal processing. You don't just write down your thoughts, you have to categorize them into fleshly versus spiritual. You categorize your emotions into negative versus positive. Here are the exact steps you take to utilize this journal to systematically process trauma and regain control. First, explicitly name the trial. Second, document and divide your thoughts. Third, identify the emotions attached to those thoughts. And finally, formulate a conscious action plan at the choices level to ensure you win the battle. This is literally taking that authority inside that we learned about from the Hebrew pictographs and actively wielding it. Section 6, Navigating Towards Peace. To bring this whole visual journey together, it's really important to see that mind transformation is not a one-time event. It is an ongoing loop. This weekly reading goals journal reinforces that healing requires a constant intake of new positive information. In the author's case, reading scripture, pulling out keywords, and defining them. It's a continuous cycle of evaluating your mental boundaries, observing that TTEDCBA chain reaction, and ensuring your authority inside remains strong and yoked to a positive purpose. And that brings us to the ultimate question laid out by the cross-compass method. When faced with your own daily trials and the chain reaction of your emotions, what will you do? Will you choose to be guided by the shepherd's staff, maintaining your boundaries and your inner authority? Or will you allow your authority to be cut, letting your thoughts spiral out of control? I hope this visual breakdown has given you some powerful new tools to consider for your own mental architecture. Thank you so much for learning with us today, and keep exploring.